Okay, when you think of Hieronymus Bosch, what comes to mind? Probably those wild, surreal, almost nightmarish paintings, right? Full of these bizarre, fantastical creatures. He's always been one of art history's biggest mysteries. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if his art isn't just a crazy spectacle? What if it's something way more personal?
Well, Bosch himself gives us the first and maybe the most important clue. He actually said, "I did not paint to entertain you." I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That one sentence completely flips the script on how we usually see his work. It's basically telling us, hey, look past the crazy medieval carnival stuff. There's something else going on here.
So that's the big question, isn't it? If he wasn't trying to entertain people, then what was he doing? What's the point of these incredibly detailed, sometimes pretty disturbing masterpieces? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into.
Here's the thing. Bosch's art, it was never meant to be a window into some far-off fantasy land. No, it was supposed to be a mirror, one held right up to your soul. You see, for Bosch, spirituality wasn't some soft, fuzzy feeling. It was a discipline, a serious one. It was all about learning to govern your inner world, your willpower, your desires, your fears. And his paintings, they're basically a tool for that discipline, a way for you to actually see your own habits before they trap you, before they become a cage. Okay, so with that in mind, let's take a look at his most famous painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights. Now, the key here, the real trick, is to stop seeing it as just one big, confusing picture. Instead, think of it as a journey, a roadmap of temptation. I mean, the way the painting is even built tells you everything. It's a triptych, which means it has these 3 panels that open up. And that's not just for show. It's a progression. Bosch isn't just showing you a single static scene. He is laying out a path for the soul to travel. And that path, it unfolds in 3 very clear stages. So let's walk this road. Stage 1, on the left, is innocence. That's when you believe you can't possibly fall. Then that leads you right into the middle panel. Stage 2, indulgence. This is the big party, where you believe you'll never have to pay for any of it. But then there's the third panel, on the right, consequence. And this isn't about some angry god seeking revenge. It's more like the moral physics of the universe. It's the cost, the bill that, well, it always arrives. And this is such a critical idea to get. Just look at that central panel. It's bright. It's almost playful, isn't it? It's seductive, not scary. And that right there is the trap. Because temptation rarely shows up looking like a monster. Hell doesn't usually start with fire. It starts with permission. It starts with that small yes, that moment you think is harmless. And that's what gets the whole dangerous ball rolling. All right, now for the part everyone remembers, the monsters. To really get what Bosch was doing with them, we have to make a little shift in our thinking, away from pure fantasy and more towards psychology. So the common view, right, is that these monsters are just surreal nightmares, a product of an incredible imagination. But Bosch's view, it's the key that unlocks everything. For him, these creatures are our inner habits, but with bodies. He literally gave our vices a physical form, so we couldn't pretend they weren't there. Think about it. He's taking these abstract things that drive us and giving them a shape. So that weird bird-like creature, maybe that's what unchecked appetite looks like. That demon making fun of someone's foolishness, that could be the physical form of shame, or cruelty, or vanity. Every single monster is a diagnosis of something inside us, including that really common habit of pretending this stuff only applies to other people. And that's why they look so strange and jumbled up. The fact that they're hybrids, part human, part machine, part animal, that's not random at all. It's the perfect picture of a soul in chaos. It's what happens when our inner world is a mess, where desire gets tangled up with fear and pleasure is fused with punishment. They show us what we become when our own inner government completely falls apart.
But Bosch doesn't just stop with our individual habits. He goes a step further. He shows us how these little personal habits can scale up and create something way, way bigger and more frightening, a system.
He calls it the machinery of sin, and here's how it works. A single repeated craving, that becomes a ritual. And that ritual, it starts to build a system around itself. And that system, once it's big enough, starts to pretend that it's just fate. It feels so inevitable, so total, that we forget we're the ones who built it in the first place. So how does this machinery actually work? Well, here's a thought that is chillingly modern. The devil loves efficiency. These systems work by removing the pause. You know, that little moment of hesitation where your conscience might have a chance to speak up? The whole machine is designed to just keep you moving, reacting, consuming, never stopping to actually think.
Okay, so if the problem is this machinery that gets rid of the pause, then the solution has to be protecting the pause. And for this particular fight, Bosch gives us a hero, Saint Anthony.
Because when you really look at Bosch's work, you see the real core of this spiritual battle. And the devil's greatest weapon?
Well, it's not actually temptation.
It's urgency, that feeling that you have to act right now. Think about it. If temptation can make you feel rushed, it can make you act without thinking. It corners you into a quick choice. And let's be honest, quick choices are almost never wise choices. It's all about that pressure to act now.
And this is where we see St. Anthony's real strength. Look at him. He's not out there fighting monsters with a big sword. He's winning by just holding a center, by refusing to be rushed. He is protecting the pause where his conscience can actually get a word in. That is where his true power comes from.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most powerful tool that Bosch gives us for getting some real clarity in our own lives. And the idea is this: the end is the only honest teacher. For Bosch, thinking about the end of your life wasn't just some scary threat. It was a tool for clarity. Because when you look at your life from the very end, it strips away all the excuses, right? All those little stories we tell ourselves, like, I'll deal with it later, or it's not that bad. It just forces a really powerful, maybe even brutal kind of honesty.
So here's the bottom line. This isn't just a history lesson. Bosch really meant for his paintings to be used as a tool for your own self-reflection. So the real question is, how can we, hundreds of years later, actually use his art the way he wanted us to?
Okay, here's the viewer's work. First, you look at that big map of a painting and ask yourself honestly, where am I in this picture? Second, you look at those monsters and use them as a mirror. Recognize the habits that you're feeding in your own life. Third, you practice what St. Anthony taught us. Protect that pause. Refuse to be rushed. And finally, fourth, you view today's choices through that lens from the very end. When you do that, the painting stops being just something on a museum wall. It becomes a living, breathing tool for your own inner world. So really, take another look. Which monster is looking back at you?